Hello, 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 and welcome everyone to our Techspressionism virtual salon. Today's subject that we will be talking about in a few is actually nightmares. Previous salons have been about various other subjects that are either near and dear or just controversial topics like NFTs and the like. But today we're talking about nightmares, which was a kind of democratic voted topic to talk about, not dreams, but specifically nightmares. And so we're going to be talking about, art and showing art about from some of our artists that have that as a subject. If this is your first time here, generally speaking, this is kind of a similar to like a roundtable kind of discussion where people can chime in and share what they wish to share for a couple of minutes, and we'll have a short discussion about it, and we'll just carry on the discussion until it reaches whatever point feels good, right? and then from there, we'll see what happens. I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Davonte Bradley. I've been moderating these salons for I guess about 2 years now almost. And joining me are the wonderful various Techspressionists that have joined our growing community. We have Colin Goldberg, who kind of coined the term and helped kind of kick all of this off. And just a lot of people have been in and around for a long time, like Patrick Lichty and Victor, Roz, Renata, Michael. I could go through everybody, but that would be a lot of time. But anyway,
Renata, our Instagram
Renata.
Curator, got to give a shout out.
All right. Yeah, I was going to, kind of, maybe. Nothing. Sorry. Anyway, but if it's your first time joining us, I want to do a special welcome for you. I'm glad you're able to join in. We do these every two weeks, and generally the format for the past couple has been the same, where just a general subject that we've been talking about and sharing art about. So I think we have Carla, who is a professor at NYU. Hello, see you.
Here you are.
That's a new face. And who else is new here that I do not recognize? We'll go down the list. Well, if you're new, welcome. All right, so let's kick things off here. Nightmares. So I personally have not actually experienced nightmares for several years. I remember having nightmares all the time in childhood. Probably because high stress environments, a lot of changing going on, probably very direct link to that. But what replaced the nightmares was something called sleep paralysis, which is a little bit adjacent to that. And I want to say the distinction between a dream and a nightmare, I think it comes down to the general emotion involved with the experience, right? So dreams we think of as, they're pleasant, they're playful or just weird. Like, oh, that was an interesting experience. I don't know what to make of that, but that was an interesting experience, right? That's dreams for the most part. Nightmares, on the other hand, tend to kind of maybe traumatize us in some ways, scare us, invoke a lot of negative emotions. So it's the negative side of the subconscious doing whatever, or whatever subconscious is deciding to manifest at that time or trying to process. And my art never has really gone through anything like that. Mine is mostly focused on sleep paralysis, which does evoke a lot of the same kinds of emotions that a nightmare would generally, like fear, anxiety, and all of that. But to call it an actual nightmare, I can't say, but I'll get into that a bit later. But if anybody wants to take the floor, feel free. Michael?
Hey, thanks, Davo.
Yeah.
Yeah, when Verneda suggested this topic last time, I was really enthusiastic about it. So thanks, Verneda. So there's a couple things here for me that I think are really relevant, especially from an artist standpoint. And I've got a couple perspectives. One is you had mentioned that sense of fear. And so for me, dreams are very psychological and spiritual. And the nightmares aspect to this is something that a number of elders up in Canada that I had time to spend with, they had mentioned that for a lot of medicine people and folks following spiritual paths, oftentimes have very special kinds of nightmares that challenge them and confront them to make profound changes in their life, to bring in new things. And oftentimes, nightmares get repeated until you're able to transform and go through the experience without ending the nightmare and waking up and not being able to resolve anything. So that's kind of where I'm coming from on the art that I would like to share. And hopefully, one of my favorite sayings or quotes is from Dune, that fear is the mind killer. And so I put the full quote here on this, this image, because I think it's really relevant to us as people and humans, and especially as artists as well. I think expressing the dark side of things can feel sometimes sensational, but for me, like I said, this is more of a psychological and a spiritual set of images that I wanted to share. So the environment is always something. You had mentioned, Davo, fantastical kinds of environments. And oftentimes there's a sense, for me, at least personally, like it's somewhat familiar, but there's this foreboding element added on top of things. And to me, Francisco Goya was a real strong pull for me when I created some of these images. I created a number of these with the idea of the soul eater, that there's the dark man that I've talked about in some previous salons that we've had. And it's the sense of atmosphere, the sense of fluidity, of things changing, of feeling off balanced, for me is something that's really relevant in nightmares. And the environment sucking you in. And there's just this very, to me, all-encompassing sense for my nightmares. And then there's the fear that potentially I might get transformed into something else that I'm not sure about what that might be. And so in my nightmares, I oftentimes go through very strong emotional feelings about things. I think that confrontation of the shadow and the light is oftentimes a very powerful element within nightmares for myself, that I know, like, I can kind of see something, but yet there's something hidden, and it's that hidden thing that both attracts me and repels me at the same time. It's like I'm drawn to it, but I'm terrified of it at the same time. And then the final thing is the dark man that I've talked about before is just this presence, this entity, this unknowing thing of what it might be. And the thing that strikes me is eyes. If I look into the eyes of the enemy or the fantastical being that's about to suck me in or take over. And that's something that's really powerful for me in the imagery that I wanted to share today that I thought was relevant to nightmares. And the last thing for me relates to what I was talking about with the elders, talking about the confrontation. And so for me here, this is kind of the image of the soul eater that's staring right at me, and I'm right at the precipice of, am I going to make it, or am I going to be destroyed or sucked in? And this very last image is kind of the final like microsecond, sometimes before I wake up, if you can see on the left side of the image, there's like this arm that's being sucked into sort of the skeletal creature there. And then this right there at the end of the hand is like a fetish of me, of my mind, my heart, my spirit, my psychological state, that I'm trying to keep away from the soul eater, you know, completely absorbing me. And typically that's usually when I wake up, or if in some cases where I've had some kind of transformation, that has happened. So anyway, that's what I wanted to share. And I appreciate being able to show you some of my imagery today. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Michael.
Oh, yeah, amazing.
Thanks.
With the eye thing though, though I may not experience nightmares too much anymore, they're a very prominent feature of my sleep paralysis hallucinations, surprisingly. Like if when I actually get around to showing what I'm talking about, like I tried to replicate what I would see as best I could, but I do not yet have the artistic skills to depict that well enough yet. That's kind of why I've been like putting it off for years. So it's like, I want to show this as best I can, but at present my skills don't make a lot of sense. So I've just been putting it off, and you know. But I'll show you guys what I have a bit later. But thank you. All right, I think next up we have Renata.
No, I'm not presenting today. I'm chilling. I'm kicking back. And
Oh,
watching-
sorry, Renata.
Renata. Thanks, Davo.
Sorry.
I'm going to show a short animation that I made in 2021. The title of it is Prokofiev's Cave, and it's about losing your mind, losing your identity, and losing your ability to smell or to speak. And the soundtrack was created by a musician named Kultur Owl, who I collaborated with. Very rarely do I do this, but he wanted to work with me on this piece. And you'll hear him singing in gibberish. And it's a language he invented for this work. And it adds to the horror of the piece because you really don't know what he's saying. It's made up. We have a faceless, voiceless, can't smell, has a hole in the middle of him where there should be a solar plexus character. And what he can see is weird, dark, and gothic. There's a nod to the Belgian surrealist René Magritte, where you see him wearing a bowler hat, which is a motif that Magritte used fairly frequently to depict average man in the gray suit. And you also see the feet of animals with scaly legs and cloven hooves. There are snakes. There are trees that are directly out of a Caspar David Friedrich painting. He's a German romantic artist. And the main character gets beaten up by a milky substance. And in the last, which represents a disembodied ghost figure. And in the last bit, he gets disintegrated. So I'm going to share my screen. Thank you.
Really
Thank
nice.
you.
It's incredible.
Thanks.
The music definitely does help play into the whole foreboding, ominous, kind of
Mhm.
anxiety filling. Yeah. Does anybody else have anything else to say? Or well, there's definitely comments in the chat saying it's amazing. That's excellent work. Yeah, agree with that.
Mhm.
Now, would like to know. You said the figure in the story or nightmare was being assaulted by a white fluid, right? Was there any significance to? Well, I'm sure there probably is, but like, what is the significance to that specifically?
Well, the fluid is a phantasmagorical being that doesn't have a body. So it exists in the form of floating particles. And it's basically standing for those ghosts that we see in our worst nightmares. The word phantasme in French is ghost.
Gotcha. All right, well, thank you. Let's see, going to the chat real quick for one moment. Amazing. Yep. Amazing. Amazing. Scary. Yep. All right. So I think you did capture those feelings very well for people, or at least the feelings communicated well enough. So thank you again, Renata. All right. Moving right along, we have Colin.
Hey, what's up, guys? So yeah, I didn't think at first that I had anything relevant, but just sort of before it started, this piece popped into my head that is an old piece from graduate school from 2006, and it's a short audiovisual piece, and I was definitely going through some stuff at that time. I'm sure Patrick can attest to that. He was right there with me, and definitely, you know, dealing with battling some demons, personal things going on. And this piece is sort of an experimental video piece that I shot in my apartment, and it's almost like a little sort of fever dream, but it has I feel like a nightmarish quality to it. So let me see if I could just share that particular window. It's about 2 minutes. That's it.
Nice.
Oh, yeah.
There's a lot to keep track of too.
Yeah. It's a modern nightmare.
For sure.
It's the nightmare of urbanization and loss of cohesion and vanishing into nothingness type thing. It's spooky.
Something going down the drain.
Yeah, it's a waking nightmare. It's a waking nightmare, the type of nightmare that people live on subways, you know, homeless individuals that abide.
Anyone else get the vibe of like running out of time with the constant ticking?
Oh yeah, I get that now.
Yeah.
Totally.
I think it's fascinating just how the idea of fear kind of can manifest in a lot of different ways, because fear is different for everyone. Like some people are afraid of death, some people are afraid of, you know, spiders, but it always kind of produces the same kind of visceral reactions. Oh, am I hearing myself? Yeah, double feedback. But yeah, no, it's just that fear can manifest itself in so many different ways and have so many different interpretations to each individual person. And then to see that fear kind of represented visually through pieces of art or animations or video even, adds a whole nother layer to it and a whole nother layer of interpretation too. So that's all I have to add about that. But thank you, Colin. You said that was during one year in grad school?
Yeah, that was from 2006, and it was shot on like a little 5 megapixel camera. And like I was playing around with, you know, like a lot of my work sort of deals with the idea of the gesture. So I was creating these sort of gestural marks that became masks that were like tweened in Flash. So like the video was composited in Flash, and then sort of, you know, a bunch of other stuff at the time that the Apple Final Cut suite with like Soundtrack Pro and stuff like that. That's where a lot of those audio samples came from. But yeah, a lot of that work from grad school was really just sort of experimenting, but it was definitely like a snapshot of a mind in under stress.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Carla said she was she loved to use Flash in the early 2000s.
Oh my gosh, late 90s, early 2000s. Flash was my thing. It was my bread and butter for teaching too. I don't know if anybody else, and yeah, I made a lot of stuff with Flash. And then the iPhone killed Flash.
Adobe Animate.
Right.
Had a conversation about obsolescence, right?
Totally.
Ties right back to that.
That's a nightmare too, obsolescence.
Yeah,
It's true.
that nightmare.
All right. Okay, I think next up we have Susan, I think.
Okay. Wow,
Yep.
thanks. Sorry, I was a little late. I was in transit, but I'm going to share my screen. Well, maybe I should talk first, but that's all right. Okay, are you seeing that? Pandemic nightmare? Yeah. So I too thought that I didn't have work to fit the theme. And then, like, as often happens, I began to realize, like, it doesn't have to be whatever my first response was to the word. I don't have to literally have to have work that embodies nightmare. Anyway, so I was glad that I did that. And so I thought about it actually quite a bit yesterday, and then realized that I had a whole body of work, a lot of work that I created during the pandemic, like in 2020, that revolved around my biking and wearing a mask. And so I went through my files and I found about 19 pieces that, and the reason, another piece of this information is that I'm glad that you mentioned, Devo, about childhood experiences, because as a child, I experienced nightmares for a number of years and was actually medicated and taken to the doctor, and it did influence my life in terms of trigger fears around events in the world. I was responding to, I got terrified about alien invasion as a child. And I couldn't, anyway, so that happened. And so when the pandemic happened, a lot of that fear happened for me, which can happen for people. And I began, so I'm going to go through these. And what I wanted to say was that the mask for me became a way for me to somewhat control the stimulated fear of a pandemic, and that some disaster was going to happen, that my world was going to blow up in some way, like childhood mind kind of thing. So I'm going to show you pieces that I created in 2020 that had to do with wearing a mask and using my usual self-portraiture, self-reflective viewpoint, and communicating about what the world felt like to me. And then, of course, using the apps and interpretation with my iPhone and iPad that I have done for about 6 or 7 years. As an artist, I feel pretty driven to show the same thing over and over and over, which many of us do, multiple interpretations of the same event or same thing. You know, it could be a parrot or it could be masks. So I was doing that, and I'm actually really glad. This is one of my favorite ones, actually. I was really glad to have the idea put in my head to pull these pieces together. I hadn't thought of doing that before, and I'm probably going to put them into a video with some sound. I think it would be great to have some sound with them. That may be the last one. No, there's more. Yeah. As you can see, it's me, sunglasses, bike helmet, mask. I did a lot of that. I think that's it.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Hey, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
I thought I would get out of this. Okay. There. So thanks a lot. I'm glad that I gave it all a second look in terms of pulling something together. And it gave me an opportunity to look at some work I hadn't really focused on before and see them as a cohesive body. Thanks a lot. So,
Hey, thank you.
Yeah.
I'll say definitely the pandemic, even though we're still technically in it, still,
Yeah.
there's still very much fear and anxiety surrounding what's actually going to happen when we're at the end of this, or if we even get to the end of this, what that
Yeah.
even looks like. Because 2 years in at this point, and things are better, but they keep it's like a wave. It's like we start to kind of ease out of it, and then something spikes, and then anxieties go back up a bit.
Yeah, I think I also appreciate the opportunity to have a time to put those two things together in my mind. I hadn't completely synced them in my mind, my nightmare childhood times with the pandemic. I mean, I knew I was afraid in the pandemic, but it's good to say it out loud to people in a group. That's thanks for the opportunity to do that, to share that.
Well, thank you for sharing.
You're welcome. Take care.
All right, you too, Susan.
I just want to make a quick remark that some of those frames reminded me of scenes from a Japanese manga, that you're illustrating your life and you see glimpses of the figure, as you do often in those graphic novels.
I'm not as familiar with that, but thank you, Renata.
Want some nightmare fuel? Look up Junji Ito and his work. He's a horror manga artist, and it's powerful. I'll say that.
If you type it in the chat, that'd be great.
Yeah,
Thanks.
sure.
I've got the cat t-shirt.
Nice. But he's definitely well known for very nightmarish imagery.
Oh,
Like,
yes.
he's very much known for that.
I find the ones that are photographic like really resonated for me. I mean, they felt much like really real. I think there were a couple of black and white ones that were just distorted a little bit less, but they really resonated.
Thanks, Lee.
Anybody else have anything they want to add before we move on?
I just wanted to say, Susan, I really enjoyed seeing your pieces, and I kept thinking about the mask worn in war. And of course, we were in a war type situation with a virus, but I kept thinking of war between your glasses almost seeming like goggles and the mask connecting. Brought that other meaning up, as well as the pandemic. So thank you for sharing.
I think Patrick has his hand up. Do you, Patrick, on purpose?
I said, I mean, when the queue comes up, I've got 2 or 3 things.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
And I think Roz is actually going to be up next. I guess you can go after Roz.
Sure.
All right, sounds good. Oh, Cynthia, did you want to present, or did you have something to add?
I'd like to present if there's time.
Okay.
Cynthia, go ahead. I mean, I don't know if there was a queue, but I jumped in kind of late. Davo, I'll leave that.
Well, I jumped in late too, Roz.
There you go.
Okay.
See, this is what happens when everyone's trying to be kind.
Well, I know, really. I didn't know if there was a sign up for this or not. Was there, Davo?
No.
Not really.
Not that I saw. It's pretty open.
Well, Cynthia, how about I go? I'll try to be quick, and somebody will blow a whistle when I start talking too much, which does happen sometime. Is that all right with you?
I'll keep you on a tight leash.
There you go. Okay. Yeah, mine. Hold on, let me go share. Can everybody see my screen?
Wow.
Well, that's certainly not mine. Michael, Pierre Price and I, we always have this connection, but, we didn't talk about this before we did it, but Goya, I was thinking nightmare. No, that's not my stuff at all, which I've heard from a lot of you saying the same thing. But when I started thinking about it, I started thinking about my gun series that just kind of came out of me in like 2016 through 18. And, I don't own a gun. And people are like, Roz, why are you drawing guns? And I kept thinking of the word, when I saw the word nightmare, I thought, a nightmare can be something where things have become, powerful or beautiful or sanitized things that are destroying us, destroying our children, destroying our society. And when I think about the guns, my guns, people always say, but they're beautiful. But nightmares can be, I think that's where art, I love the paradox in art, where it can be about beauty because of the marks, like a Jenny Saville, where, it's beautiful, but it's ugly too. And, I just want to start with this Goya. It's called Saturn devouring his son. And in some ways, our technology, with our guns, I'm just going into my Kalashnikov, which I showed, in the Techspressionist show this summer. This is, I started doing these pieces and I can kind of go in them, but they're not really very, these are not my high res. I put this together really fast, but they are very high res and they go huge. And it's like I'm looking into the belly of the beast. And yet sometimes I would listen to kind of strange dichotomous music like Christmas or something syrupy and sweet. And I'd be looking at another image of a gun, and each one of these, this is going in close up. This is going into the barrel of that Kalashnikov. I'm moving right along, but I think we are in a bit of a nightmare, yes, ourselves with what's happening with guns. This latest at the nightclub, and it's still ongoing. This is called, I believe, air sport gun. Like, oh, isn't it fun? I remember going to a marketplace, on a Saturday in Louisiana, and there were just tons and tons of plastic guns. I'm not talking about squirt guns, but guns that can really hurt and kill in huge barrels. And I went back and did this piece, and this is looking really close up inside the barrel of that gun. You can see how high res these are. It says, gather up the kids, we're going for a ride. And that's right in this little blue area, and those little dots, that's a close up. So just going right along, spooky snub nose. Guns they're beautiful, evil things. And maybe it's stretching the term nightmare, but I kind of felt like it relates. This is called I'm Afraid of the Rainbow Lincoln. It's the gun that shot Abraham Lincoln. And I think some of you know I've done a whole series of Abraham Lincoln. I've been having an affair with a dead man. And here's a close-up of that, and just the extreme tension and stuff going on in a gun before the poor crazed person who fires it does so, and the person who dies, and how it changes our lives. This is called The Quiet Woodsman. And here's the close-up of where the gun goes, out. And there's a lot of frenzy and stuff going on in these. I remember this piece particularly. It's called Happy Day, Who's Praying for Me? And I read about this poor person I saw. It's not like I'm not for the victims, of course, but I also feel for the deranged individual who does these acts in such a desperate way. Killing your own people, for no reason. Like, he went into a movie theater, and this was the gun that was used, and I think it was in Colorado or maybe again Louisiana. And here's a close-up of that gun, very close up. I found the abstracts going on inside of the belly of the gun, like shoot or not shoot, to be very important here. And they are kind of beautiful, but I think they are nightmarish. This is a gun that shot a lawyer in Argentina, a Bursa 22, and he was put away by the government because he was trying to do good, which can always get you in trouble if you really put your mouth out there. There's another close-up of that. And a final one I don't think a lot of you have seen, actually. It's called We Are Beach Bitchin' People. I was getting really dark into these, and a lot of my work's funny and light, and well, not all of it, but it was all about heaven and hell and what happens in the barrel of this gun and this kind of technology where we're destroying ourselves. And here's a close-up on, I feel like this is my Hampton Beach, I live pretty right in the Hamptons. And anyway, that's it. I just wanted to dive into that topic. It was one that I didn't think I could relate to, but I sure did. And thank you.
Thank you, Roz. Thank you so much. It's funny that your presentations on this and one or some of the few nightmares I can actually remember from my childhood were actually about guns. It was a weird thing because it was the same kind of dream. It wasn't the same dream, it was the same kind of dream. Probably about 6 or 7 times. Always happened the same way, where I would always be in a car. There was always an assailant, and the dream would end with me getting shot in the neck, right here. Every single one, all 7 of them.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a weird thing. And I think the scariest part about it wasn't even necessarily the nightmare itself. There was a deja vu moment at some point where it was the exact same scenario that was in the nightmare. Car was in the same position. I was at the same building. Like everything looked as exactly as it did in the dream. And I started to freak out and panic. Like my anxiety levels were high, and I was looking around because in the dream there was a person that came up from like behind the vehicle. So I was like constantly looking around the vehicle. It's like actually fearing for my life. And yeah, that shook me. I didn't have any nightmares like that after that happened, but it was crazy. That was a crazy period of time. I don't know what was going on in my subconscious mind during that time period, but it was definitely terrifying.
I'm sure it was. And a still image can be terrifying, and I'm always examining the still image and kind of making animation out of it. So it's a kind of a different approach, but even with the Diamondscapes. But I know we're running out of time, so thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Oh, Patrick, can you wait? I think Carla wanted to present something really quick, since
Okay.
I think she might have to go.
Oh, no. Simply, everybody else should present first. Do we end at 6:30? Because this is my first time here. So are we ending sharp at 6:30? Probably.
7, right?
Or 7? Oh.
Yeah,
yeah.
it goes to
Okay.
7, and then we stop the recording at that point, and then people a lot of times hang out afterward.
Yeah.
But
So if
yeah,
there's any
recording goes to
possibility
7.
after everybody else shares, because I literally just was like, oh, I'll share something. So everybody else should share first.
Yeah. that's
Yeah, a
fine.
lot of times people just jump in. So if you want to just do the raise hand thing under reactions,
Yeah.
and then who knows, maybe more people will join in afterwards. But it's great to see people, just jumping in, showing work. That's what this is all about.
Awesome.
I was
Yeah.
gonna
But
try to
I
jump in
think
at the tail end.
Cynthia and Patrick were next. So yeah. Great.
Yeah, so it's gonna be Patrick, Cynthia, and then I guess you, Marlo, and Lee.
Okay, that'd be pretty good. Okay, thanks. Well, by the way, my dear wife, Nagin, sends her best to everybody, and she's in the middle of a real life nightmare. So, in the middle of Tehran. So that's still waiting. So, but let's see here. That being said, what I've been doing is that I've been going into let's see here. Can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay, let's see here. I'll go up here and go full. I've been going into what I call sort of the subconscious of the subconscious of AI engines like Midjourney. And so what I've been doing is that I've been making kind of oblique prompts that attempt to try to do a surrealist sort of way of jamming the engine and sending it sideways. And so what happens here is that these are some things that I was doing. For one thing, that was supposed to be the arrival of the unicorn apocalypse, and this is the background of it. Of just saying, I took 2 or 3 of these and layered them, and one said, this is, one part because, this really resonated with me because of the fact that I'm 60 and I grew up in the, in the duck and cover days. And I said, holy crap, this this brings back fond childhood memories. And the next one, this was another one I just said, the world's most dangerous animal. And I did not expect this to show the world's most dangerous animal in downtown Chicago. And so this shows up. And I said, well, I'm not sure whether that's it or not, but I said it's kind of a Lovecraftian sort of thing. And that's kind of a, and I didn't really question it after that, but I thought, for the legs and the color of the papillae and all that sort of thing, I thought on one hand, it had a certain charm to it, but also on the other hand, really horrific. And then the other thing that I've been working on is something that I call artifacts from a parallel universe that have been things that grew out of my original work that led to called The Dirigibles of Denali and the Shared Universe, which led to Nathan Schaefer's creative capital series called Wintermoot, and his creating Fish Head Soup. And so it kind of has to do with this Northwestern, set of stories about Anglo-Indigenous parallel universes. And so this is one that's kind of a sort of steampunk Lovecraftian sort of thing. And so on one hand, steampunk cyberpunk Lovecraftian thing where I just started typing in things like jet engines and T-34 tank and looks like a cat and all these sort of, and just decided that in the back of my head, I'm calling this the real Skynet. In other words, this is sort of like not, when the Terminator isn't what we think it looks like. And then it's just, it's big, lumbering, dangerous, and fuzzy and cute at the same time. And I think those sorts of discontinuities are the things of which nightmares are made of. But the thing is that maybe there's a thin boundary between fantasy and nightmare. So anyways, that's all I got. So thank you.
Thank you. Now I can't help but imagining cats with opposable thumbs getting their hands on guns.
Exactly.
All right, well, thank you so much for that. And I guess we'll move right on because we only have 30-ish minutes left. So try to get through everybody. But Cynthia, you're up.
Okay. Let's see. Oh, I know what's wrong. Here we go. Just having trouble on my iPad getting. Okay, no. Finally. Finally. It says screen mirroring and it won't bring anything else up.
Technical difficulties.
What did you say?
Technical difficulties.
Yeah, I guess.
Looks
It
like
doesn't
you're
want-
on my screen, you're frozen.
Oh yeah, your webcam stopped too.
Really?
Yeah.
Let's try again.
Wouldn't be one of our salons if there wasn't at least one technical issue.
Yeah, that's unfortunate.
Yeah. You want
So
to
you're
move on
not-
and come back to you, or?
Yes, why don't you do that? I don't want to hold everyone up.
All right, we can do that. Guess next up then would be Carla.
Okay, hi.
Hi.
Okay, and let me just scrub on the timeline and start this at the beginning. And for some of you, because I know some of you here, so for some of you, you're already familiar with this piece, but because we're talking about nightmares, it just seemed apropos of that. A lot of my work deals with the absurd, and I have a very rich dream life and sometimes nightmaric, but I always try to filter it through kind of absurd depictions of the human condition. And I also often incorporate remix into my work quite a bit. And so I'm going to share a piece that's about 8 years old right now. It's called The Garden of Emoji Delights. But I just feel like I was going to just pick out pieces from the Hell panel, but like what I start to do with the moving image work, Paradise is, you know, flying planes and boats, you know, crash upon paradise, and it becomes this arid, you know, kind of spot, and all sorts of stuff happens. Earth as we know it is depopulated of humans and animals as a nod to the Anthropocene. And so there's all sorts of nightmarish elements to it. So, okay, without further ado, I'll just share this. And I'm sharing the version that has audio, which is very kind of upbeat and Baroque, some kind of, again, remix. But so take this in the kind of absurdist sense of nightmares. All right. So let's see, let me make sure I have the right screen, and I'll share sound, and here we go. Am I sharing this screen? Yes? Okay, here we go. Oh no, the audio stopped playing. Are you not hearing the audio? I'm not hearing the audio. Oh, you are hearing the audio. Okay, I'm not hearing it, but you are.
It's a bit loud though.
Oh, it's not letting me turn it down. Just turn it down from my computers. I'm so sorry. I can't control the audio up here. Okay, so I think that's a good stopping point. Let me stop playing it to make sure you're not still hearing. But anyway, I've done quite a few different explorations of this remix, from 3D printing to really focusing on the Hell panel, because I have to say there's a lot more fun in working on that, because it is so absurd in a space that we often don't want to kind of be too conscious of. So just thought I'd share that.
It's like
I
a
loved it.
nightmarish Mario Bros. And Farmville kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was the absurdity too, because I first started making this in 2013. So emoji were still kind of new, but like we were using that, and we still are, as this shorthand expression for emotion with each other online, right? And via all of our devices. And I was like, what happens if you kind of remix that with this piece that continues to resonate 500 years into the future now? And what happens if emoji, when overlaying a Bosch, no longer are just cute, happy symbols? They have other resonances and things. So yeah.
It works. It definitely works.
The use of the emoji is something that I find really, really incredible for art. It's a shorthand for feelings, but we all ascribe different meanings to them. You know, I send you a rose. What does it mean to you?
Gertrude Stein, a
the-
rose is a rose is a rose. That's just it. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And the thing I also noticed was how much the video game art had an influence there.
Yeah, yeah. A lot of different influences flowing into that. And the thing that's funny is when you first look at it, it just seems like the happiest thing you've ever seen because it's really highly saturated. But if you actually watch it, yeah, there are darker, kind of connotations.
It's sort of amazing the way happy things become terrifying and how you can use those things. It's sort of, there's a feeling of the Teletubbies just gone absolutely wild and scary.
Yeah, like clowns, all the different things from my childhood. A lot of them, are kind of dark too. Lee, it's good to see you, by the way. It's so good to see so many of you. I'm really happy to be here tonight. Thank you. Hey, Nina. Hey. Patrick, everybody.
Well, thank you so much for your presentation, Carla. I think Marlo wanted to present next after you, I think.
I decided against it. It was very last minute, and there are basically 3 rough pieces of an animation I'm putting together. And I brought them up, and I don't feel comfortable playing them. I have a lot to say about dreams and nightmares and how nightmares can actually change and turn into insightful things, and that's insightful messages, so to speak. I come from the same place that Michael comes from, and looking at dreams, it's very spiritual as well as analytical, as in Jungian psychology and the connection between the body and the mind and the psyche. So anyway, to make a long story short, I think I'm going to not tonight, but I was anxious to, and that's why my hand went up. And I've been really enjoying this whole evening. Thanks, everybody.
Well, thank you. And maybe some other time then. When
Absolutely.
You're more ready.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you so much. All right. I guess that just leaves Cynthia. Are you ready to try again?
Yes, I have switched to another iPad, so let's see what happens.
All right.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Now I'm going to try one more time, and if it doesn't happen, must have a bad connection tonight, I guess.
Ugh.
Well, it just wasn't meant to be. Thank you for letting me try again, Davo.
No problem. Again, maybe some other time.
Yes.
Get it working. All right. So that leaves Lee, and I guess I'll go after Lee.
So this was for me also a bit last minute. I was realizing, that not all the nightmares are ones that happen at night, and sometimes it's experiences that happen in your life. I did a piece about 15 years after 9/11. So I was in the neighborhood when the buildings came down, and I never really never really reconciled with that. And this was like the first time that I actually went down and looked at the place afterwards. I live about 10 blocks away. And it came out of looking at some Japanese photographers and maybe Robert Frank, where the ideas aren't linear, but just sort of bounce around. So I will play that. Let's see if that works. Can you see that there, the screen?
Yeah.
There's no sound to this.
Holy cow.
So that was sort of my way of maybe coming to terms with 15 years and looking back on it. Bit of a I don't know, thoughts.
You could definitely feel how somber it was.
Yeah.
Well,
Like-
for the next 2 months, I was on Yahoo Messenger up all night with friends who were living down past 14th and that sort of thing, who were just so freaked out, but they were staying there. And the other thing that was really crazy is that Wolfgang Stahlo was doing a webcam installation at Postmasters, and I was streaming that that day, and that was really crazy. And then also was it Michael Richards, who was in the residency. He didn't get out.
Mm.
He'd just done a piece with planes flying through his body.
Yeah.
I had nightmares as a child. And one of the major nightmares that I had, recurrent nightmare, started when I was about 3 years old. And it would be where I'd see these billows of clouds and smoke and ashes and people running and screaming and hollering, and knowing that death and destruction were obvious. And I remember my mom, because I grew up in a military family. My father, this is portrait there, was a Marine. And my mom would say that the Americans were so blessed because we had never had modern warfare on American soil. But I knew from the nightmares that I had, even as a toddler and on throughout grade school, et cetera, that this was a war on American soil. And I knew inside me that that was going to happen in my lifetime. And I gave it a name. I called it the World Chaos Dream. And it continued throughout undergraduate school, medical practice. Every couple of weeks, I would have the World Chaos Dream. And then when I closed my practice in 1999, I was at a crossroads and I didn't really know what direction I was going to take after walking away from a medical practice. And I took that opportunity to spend some time with family and whatnot. And I visited my parents, and who were greatly upset that I determined I was going to do something else, and I didn't know what that something else was. And so I went to spend some time with my brother in Philadelphia. And I got on a plane on the last flight out of Savannah on September 10th, 2001. So I was in the air, as midnight crossed over into September 11th. And when we flew over part of Pennsylvania, we lost altitude very quickly and people started screaming and whatnot, but then the plane leveled off and everything was fine. But that gave me a fear that I was not familiar with when that happened. And then when I got to my brother's place, slept well that night, and I woke up the next morning. I said, well, I got to call my mom, let her know that I'm all right. And I called my mother. My mother said, did you hear about the terrible thing that happened in New York? And I said, no, what happened? And she said, well, why don't you just, turn on the TV and watch the news and then call me back? And I did as she instructed, and I turned on the news, and there was the World Chaos Dream looking right at me. People terrified, moving, covered with dust. They looked like they would belong more in Pompeii than in New York City. And when I saw that, I said, okay, there's a reason why I've been having this dream. I took it as a sign. And my sign was that no more medicine, no more going back to that ball and chain sort of existence anymore, but I had to forge a new path. And I was so agitated by what I saw that I didn't really know what to do. And I tried to write about it. And because that's what I knew about poetry. I could write a poem, but the poetry wasn't happening to express what I felt. And then I stumbled upon Paint, a little rinky-dink program in Microsoft, puts into the PCs. I ran into Paint and felt how soothing the colors were. And I would just play with the colors and calm myself. And then that moved into using forms and shapes and whatnot. And from that experience, I created my first series of digital artworks, and I called it Beauty for Ashes, a 9/11 art memorial. And 4 of the pieces out of the 12 were finalists in the 2003 Boston Cyber Arts Festival. And that was when I knew that I had found my path. But 9/11 was my signal to pivot from medical arts into visual arts. And I didn't want to discuss it tonight. That's why I chose to be quiet. But lo and behold, it found me anyway. So thank you. Thank you for sharing that.
And remembrances to George Feifeld, who passed on a couple weeks ago, who ran Boston Cyber.
Renata, that was such a premonition. You obviously, the story is very compelling, and sometimes we know we have a premonition. Sometimes we just know there's this recurring thing going on. So the thread was really quite a journey. Thank you for sharing that. And I just had to comment, Lee. My heart was breaking through that whole series of photographs, and I thank you for sharing. I have a few connections to that disaster and a lot of universal ones, like we all do. But I hope that I hope that your sharing helped a little bit with your own experience of, I don't know how you find closure with this kind of thing, you know, but helps in your own healing process, because it was very potent, and thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
I think I wrote this in the chat, but I find it incredible things happen in these meetings with the Techspressionism. But you know, that the last presentation was about 9/11, and I wrote in the chat that it's our shared nightmare. I mean, something very poignant about that. Thank you for those images, Lee.
That's a good way to put it. It is sort of our everyone's shared nightmare. Yeah.
It is, yeah. You know, I don't meet anyone for long, even all these years later, after 10 minutes, if they're in New York or somewhere, or there's a deep connection, it always comes up.
The interesting thing is I went out there in October, actually, and a friend of mine was working for I think Money Matters or something like that up in the 42nd story, and he gave me a look down into it, and I just wept. So
I think every single person just about that was, they probably have a 9/11 story, just about. Like, I was actually in Washington, D.C. that day on a random trip with my family. I was supposed to go to the Mint and see the Washington Monument and all sorts of things. So I've never actually got around to doing that, by the way, all these years later. But I remember we were up there and woke up in the hotel room. News was on. I think it was just after the first plane had hit the first World Trade Center. And not incredibly long after that, like, I'm not sure what got into my stepfather at the time, but he opened up the door and there was like this huge plume of smoke off in the distance. And we're like, what in the world is that? So we were like flipping through the channels trying to figure out what else had gone on. And lo and behold, the Pentagon had also been hit. And we weren't incredibly far from there. It's like, we need to leave. It's like, as much as we need to, wanted to follow what was going on, it's like we felt that we needed to get out of there. But it was madness that day. We ended up like camping out in a McDonald's to try and wait things out to see if things would calm down. But yeah.
You know, it's not the same kind of tragedy, but there's a time period then that connects what's happening with this group and with digital, with that time in the 90s that was it was a really raging, very creative 90s for the .com. And so, not only the towers fell more seriously, but the .com had also fallen. And creative downtown New York just completely imploded, and it was a huge rising. I know there are other people here who can speak to it. So I'm not playing the violin necessarily, but it is a movement that if we are going to start a journal or something, I think we have to tie to that movement, because that was our first surge and it got wiped out. It really got wiped out.
It's what put me into academia, really.
Excuse me?
It's what put me into academia. I mean, I was running a design firm and all that sort of thing. And, our income dropped by about half, when everything got outsourced and everything, and it's just like, I kept the nose up on the plane for about 2 or 3 years. And I just said, this is too hard. And I think that, I think that I've always wanted to be an academic. So let's give it a shot. And then I went off to grad school.
Does anyone remember the term Silicon Alley?
Oh, yeah.
And
Silicon
multimedia.
Valley and Silicon Alley. Yeah. Right.
Oh, Cheryl, did you have something to add?
I just
See your
wanted
hand
to
up.
say, sorry, I just wanted to say that I'm going to leave a little early because every night I save myself from my nightmares by watching The Landscape Artists. I don't know if anybody knows about it, but it's on PBS every weekday night at 7 p.m.
Oh.
And it's wonderful. They have all, such different ways of painting, and it's just a fun thing to watch, and it goes for about 45 minutes. So I'm gonna sign off. And I had some comments, but I see the time is getting there. So love you all, and I love all the work, and I appreciate it. And get us out of this nightmare.
There are multiple nightmares.
Nightmare world.
Hey,
Yeah,
Davo, we started a little bit late. If you have some work you want to share, I'd like to see it.
Yep.
Yeah, me too.
Uh-oh.
Show and tell, Davo.
Did his connection crashing?
Where'd he go?
Yeah, we lost him.
Dang.
He might have tried to screen share and then something
Performance
weird
anxiety.
happened.
I feel like I'm not alone.
Oh,
Yeah, those images, Lee, were really just no words for it. I mean, I had done some freelance work not too long prior to that for Cantor Fitzgerald, who was like up on the top floor,
yeah.
and
Right.
just shocking, the whole situation. I left New York in 2000 and went back down from Boston on an SL train that and towers were still smoking. I mean, it was just freaking crazy.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah,
How
we
about
had
you,
to
Davo?
evacuate.
Mhm.
We thought you were going to show something and then you blew up.
Yeah, so speaking of .com crashes, my computer just blue screened.
Oh.
Yeah. Good old solid state drive got me back into here a lot quicker, but yeah, no, my computer just crashed all of a sudden.
I've been getting some blue screens lately too, and it's freaking me out. Are you on like a PC on a Windows?
Microsoft.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, me too. And I don't know what's happening. Ah, okay. Glad you're back.
Yeah, hopefully I can stay, because the last time this happened, it was like a series of blue screens, and like it didn't stop for like nearly 2 weeks, and I was trying to figure out what the heck was going on. That was a fun time. Computer was only like 6 months old at that point too.
And another kind of a nightmare.
Yeah. All right, hold on. I will try to show this real quick. Give me 1 second.
Mm-hmm.
Let me screen 2. All right, so I'm not sure if you guys have too much familiarity with what sleep paralysis is, or have experienced sleep paralysis yourselves, but pretty much the whole idea with it is that when you're asleep, sometimes you can wake up and like your brain still more or less be half asleep, but some of your sensory organs are still active, like your eyes. And you can still experience sensations, but your motor skills and everything like that, they're pretty much null and void. Like it's almost like you're trapped in your own body, right?
Oh boy.
Yeah. So it's a great time, and I've been experiencing sleep paralysis for a good chunk of my life. I never knew it had a name until years later, but I've been experiencing it for a long time, and for a lot of years, the thing that always coupled with it, there was always a sense of foreboding, always a sense of extreme anxiety, always like massive amount of fear. Like I could feel my heart beating in my chest, and there wasn't anything I could do about it. And my eyes would always be like looking around like my surroundings, and it was always dark room because you sleep at night, and this is when it would happen. But the shadows would not be still. The shadows would be moving, shifting, morphing into all sorts of odd shapes, and sometimes they would manifest themselves into like actual figures, like human shaped figures sometimes. And one of the things I also remember is that there was always eyes, like every single time there's always eyes somewhere in those figures. And it was terrifying to me. And I always dreaded it. I always dreaded experiencing sleep paralysis. I hoped it each time it happened, I hoped each time would be the last time it would happen. it wasn't the case. And I don't know when or how it happened, but there was a point where like I had decided like enough is enough. And I tried something different. So that night, I still had like some mobility in my neck, so I could move my head a little bit. So I closed my eyes and like I shifted my face directly into my pillow. No, not sure what possessed me to do that. Maybe I was just trying to avoid the hallucinations and all that. But I was hoping the hallucinations were going to stop. They did not stop. In the absence of any kind of visual input that my eyes could pick up, just the back of my eyelids, my brain was still trying to form imagery. Except it was completely different this time around. It wasn't terrifying, actually. There was, the best way I can describe it, it was like wave upon wave of shifting psychedelic colors with like this weird web of black just all throughout it. And I remember describing it to the first time to, I think I was talking to my mom about it, and she was like, "Are you on drugs?" Because it sounded really odd. And I was like, "No, I'm not on drugs. It's like, this is part of my sleep paralysis." I think it was part hallucination. But this was at the time, this was in 2004 when I made this image. That was like the closest I could get at my relative level skill. And then I think this is in 2008. This captured a bit more. You can see kind of like the oscillating black figures all, or black lines all throughout, but colors underlying it. And the other part about it too is that it wouldn't necessarily just be like black lines. It would sometimes actually form or shape themselves into like actual recognizable figures. Like it would make skulls, it would make like animal faces and heads and all sorts of things. It would be constantly morphing and shaping, and couldn't really quite get that. Again, artistic ability was limited to what I could pull off. And then again, there was always eyes too. And then 2 years ago, I discovered Deep Dream.
Oh, yeah.
And yeah, and when I saw what the Deep Dream outputs were like, and if you look closely enough, like there's eyes throughout like every single image. Like that visual static is actually a prominent feature of the sleep paralysis hallucinations I experienced. I was like, that's what that looks like. Like this is finally like, this is what I see during these events sometimes. These like four morphing figures that you can recognize them as something, but not quite. And then eyes and colors everywhere. So I did a little bit of experimentation with that. This one is a bit more subtle, but you can still see that there's still like shapes within the colors, and yeah. But for me, it was very interesting being able to kind of take control back of my sleep, with taking this terrifying or formerly terrifying experience and turning it into something beautiful that I actually kind of look forward to experiencing, despite not being able to like move. The increased heart rate and anxiety, all of that went away once I learned how to do this, and it doesn't happen so much anymore. I'm thinking that a lot of it had was around, you know, how much stress was present in my life during that time, a lot of turmoil, a lot of pain, a lot of uncertainty, very toxic home environment. Pretty sure that had a big part to play with sleep paralysis like popping up. But now that things have kind of evened out for me, I've actually, the episodes that I have sleep paralysis, they're very, very few and far between. Like it's very infrequent. I think I can count on maybe one hand how many times this year alone I've had a sleep paralysis experience. Whereas before it'd be like multiple times a week. So yeah, that's what I've got.
Mhm.
And let me try to stop sharing and
Right.
there. Yeah.
It's hard when, I guess, when nightmares are create such wonderful output,
Yeah. Yeah.
because the images are beautiful.
Yeah. And it was so strange because I was genuinely terrified of what it looked like before I got some semblance of control with what was going on. It was dreadful. Like a couple times I actually felt like I was going to die because my heart was beating so fast and so hard, and there wasn't anything I could do about it. And then when I discovered I could do things like I could actually kind of take some semblance of control with it, all of that went away, and it was amazing. Except now I don't experience them anymore. So kind of a fleeting thing. And I actually, the last time I did experience sleep paralysis, I couldn't trigger that psychedelic experience anymore. Like I did everything I did before, and it just wouldn't happen. It was just brown, actually.
I wonder if making those images like resolved something psychologically, you know?
I don't know.
Yeah, that's it sounds like you befriended. I mean, when you turned your head into the pillow and tried to, you were describing early efforts to just sort of change it up. I know the dream that I was going to talk about had to do with that, befriending what was nightmare material. And when I started, anyway, but it was a great story to hear the evolution of paralysis becoming less of a terror, and your creativity possibly helping that transition.
Well, thank you. And thank you, Carla, for your words. I'm just reading out, reading the chat now. Yeah. But we've gone over a bit. Okay. But that's fine. But I appreciate everyone that showed up and participated and shared, and all the discussions that happened. It's always a pleasant experience with all of you. So thank you all for that. And yeah.
All right, Davo, you want to count us back down out of and thank you, Davo, again for your service as always.
No problem. No problem.
So nice to see you. Nice to be here for my first time.
Yeah, no problem.
Nice to be here for my first time as well. Hello, everyone. Thank you, Ms. Nina, for inviting me. Ms. Verneda, I think we're actually from the same town.
Where?
I'm from Ladies Island.
Ladies Island. Okay, I'm in Port Royal.
Yeah, my mom knows you, I think so.
Oh yeah, who's your mom?
Elizabeth Aiken Santagata.
Oh, I know all the Aikens.
Yeah. So I just want to say thank you again for inviting me. I hope to have something to share next time. Thank you so much again, Ms. Nina.
Right. Thank you.
And whoever wants to stick around after the recording stops,
wonderful.
We have a little kind of tradition here. In lieu of an advisory board, we have an after party instead, and that's when we talk about new initiatives and just stuff not related to the salon topic. And that's usually where we come up with the next salon topic too. So you're all more than welcome to stick around for, as long as you want. So what do you think, Davo? Should we press pause on this thing?
Yeah, I think we let's Patrick.
Huh? I said
Listen, all right, sorry. All right, and we are signing off in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and